Welcome to the channel. Tonight we journey to the heart of Istanbul, March 1932, where beneath the shadowed arches of the ancient Byzantine cisterns, an English archaeologist is discovered dead, terror frozen upon his face. What begins as a tale, whispered in fear, soon unfolds into a mystery of scientific deception, ambition, and the haunting power of legend. Stay with me until the end, for the truth behind the ghost of Istanbul is far more chilling than any ghost story ever told. Your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoy these immersive mysteries, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and join our membership for ad-free stories and exclusive cases. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? Reading your comments always fills me with joy and inspiration. Now dim the lights, pour yourself a warm cup of coffee, and let's descend together into the echoing depths of Istanbul's forgotten past. This is The Ghost of Istanbul. Chapter 1. The Summons from the Golden Horn. The events that would lead me into one of Hercule Poirot's most bewildering adventures began, as fate often designs, in the most ordinary of settings. My London club on a mist-shrouded Tuesday afternoon. The soft murmur of conversation and the comforting clink of teacups surrounded me when a discreet attendant approached, holding an envelope addressed in a neat, unmistakable hand. Poirot's. Even before I broke the seal, I sensed urgency behind those carefully penned lines. My dear Hastings, I find myself in circumstances of the most extraordinary nature here in Istanbul. Your presence is essential. A case has arisen, one that promises to test even my little grey cells beyond their accustomed limits. Join me without delay at the Pera Palace Hotel. Time, mon ami, is not our ally. Yours devotedly, Hercule Poirot. Such summonses from my brilliant friend were hardly new to me, yet this one possessed an air of geographical audacity that was quite out of the ordinary. Istanbul, the very name conjured images of domes and minarets rising from the waters of the Golden Horn, of spice-laden bazaars and whispered intrigues born in shadowed alleyways. Whatever mystery had lured Poirot to that storied city must surely be of exceptional gravity and fascination. Within 2 days, I was aboard the Orient Express, that marvel of engineering and elegance that stitched together the capitals of Europe like pearls on a string. As the countryside rolled past my window, Parisian rooftops giving way to the forests of Hungary and the wide plains of the Balkans, I could not help but reflect on the remarkable course of our friendship. My association with Poirot had transformed from mere companionship to a kind of narrative partnership, where I, ever the observer, chronicled the triumphs of his incomparable mind. Still, there was something different about this letter. Beneath its polished phrasing lay a tone of unease, almost foreboding. It was not a simple matter of theft or jealousy, nor some idle mystery among the English upper classes. No, there was something more intricate, something that hinted at danger cloaked in intellect, the kind of challenge that drew Poirot's sharp mind as irresistibly as flame draws the moth. When the train finally steamed into Circasi station, the morning sun bathed the domes and towers of the city in molten gold. The air was thick with the perfume of roasting chestnuts, strong coffee, and the faint tang of the sea. Voices mingled in a dozen languages, Turkish, French, Arabic, and English, each syllable carrying a note of restless energy. My luggage trailed behind me in the care of a cheerful porter, whose multilingual chatter served as my first introduction to Istanbul's cosmopolitan soul. Crossing the Galata Bridge, I paused to gaze upon the shimmering waters of the Bosphorus, that timeless boundary between continents, where Europe and Asia meet yet never quite touch. My anticipation grew with each step. I knew that behind the doors of the Pera Palace Hotel, The world's most meticulous detective would already be hard at work, dissecting a puzzle that would soon consume us both. The Pera Palace stood as a fortress of European refinement amid the exotic grandeur of the East. Its marbled halls and glittering chandeliers offered the traveler a reassuring illusion of home. A courteous doorman, his uniform gleaming, ushered me toward the elevator, a polished contraption that hummed like a heartbeat of modernity amid the echoes of empire. When I entered Poirot's suite, he stood by the tall window overlooking the Golden Horn, framed in sunlight like a figure cut from crystal. Everything about him was immaculate. His dark suit perfectly pressed, his patent leather shoes shining like mirrors. Upon the desk beside him lay maps of Istanbul covered in precise annotations written in violet ink, every line a reflection of his fastidious thought. He turned at once, eyes alight with satisfaction. "Ah, mon cher Hastings, you have arrived sooner than I dared hope. The journey, it was not too trying for a man of your comfort-loving nature, eh?" I laughed, accustomed to his teasing. "Not at all, Poirot, though I can't imagine what sort of mischief you've uncovered in so far-flung a place." He smiled mysteriously, tapping one elegant finger upon the map. "Ah, mischief, Hastings? Non, non. This is something far greater. Here, beneath the domes and the waters of this ancient city, a man is dead. And with him, perhaps, a secret that science itself was not meant to uncover. And so began The Ghost of Istanbul, a tale not merely of murder, but of deceit, discovery, and the shadow where reason meets superstition." "Not at all, Poirot," I said, clasping his impeccably manicured hand with genuine warmth, "though I must confess you've thoroughly piqued my curiosity. Your telegram was brief, uncharacteristically so, and I've been left to imagine the worst." He smiled faintly, that measured smile that never revealed more than he wished. "Ah, mon ami, even the telegraph cannot always be trusted. There are messages one must deliver in person. Istanbul, you see, is a city where the past listens keenly and the walls, how do you say, they have ears." He gestured toward a velvet armchair placed to catch the sunlight that spilled through the tall windows, illuminating the breathtaking view of the Bosphorus. As I settled in, he moved with his usual deliberate grace to pour coffee from an ornate Ottoman set. The aroma, dark, spiced, and strangely intoxicating, filled the room, unlike any brew I had tasted in London's stuffy clubs. "3 days ago," Poirot began, lowering himself into a chair opposite me, "I received an unexpected visitor, Inspector Kamal Bey of the Istanbul police. An excellent officer, educated in Paris, fluent in French, and most rare among his profession. A man whose skepticism does not blind him to imagination." "And what business brought this inspector to your door?" I asked. Poirot's voice grew quiet, deliberate. "Death, mon ami, a death most unnatural." I leaned forward as he continued. "An English archaeologist, Sir Lionel Harcourt, was found dead in the Byzantine cisterns beneath Sultanahmet. The locals call it the Basilica Cistern, a labyrinth of ancient columns and shadowed waters that echo with centuries of history. He was discovered by torchlight at dawn, his face contorted in a terror beyond description. A chill crept up my spine, despite the warmth of the morning sun streaming through the glass. "Good heavens! What was the cause?" "That," Poirot replied, rising to stand before the window once more, "is the enigma. No sign of violence, no poison detectable. Yet his expression, so dreadful, so absolute, has set the city whispering." He turned, eyes gleaming. "They speak of the ghost of Istanbul, a spirit said to haunt those who disturb the city's buried secrets. The people believe it was this phantom that claimed Sir Lionel's life." "Surely, Poirot," I exclaimed, "you don't lend credence to such tales?" He raised an offended brow, his moustache quivering. "Mais non. I am a man of science, Hastings. Ghosts, bah! But superstition, ah! There lies the true mask of crime. A clever mind may wield fear as a weapon more powerful than any blade. The assassin who cloaks himself in myth believes himself invisible." He poured himself a second cup of coffee, eyes thoughtful. "Inspector Kemal himself is unsettled. He is a rational man. But this case, it has stirred something deeper, something that touches the roots of this ancient city. The authorities tread carefully, afraid that pressing too hard might offend the local faiths and stir unrest." I studied my old friend as he spoke. Beneath his usual composure, there was a flicker of unease, an energy that hinted this mystery had pierced deeper than most. "So," I said slowly, "you think this ghostly business hides a very human hand?" "Exactly, mon cher Hastings," he replied sharply, turning from the window with sudden animation. "Where others see phantoms, I see patterns, and where they see curses, I see motive. Somewhere beneath these cobbled streets, among the shadows of the cistern, lies a truth, ingenious, cruel, and entirely human." I rose to change from my travel-worn clothes, watching as Poirot bent once more over his desk. The sunlight caught his precise purple notes scattered across maps of Istanbul, lines and circles that resembled the inner workings of a clock, orderly yet mysterious. As the call to prayer drifted faintly through the air, I couldn't help but feel that we stood on the edge of something profound, a puzzle woven from the threads of history, fear, and deception. Somewhere beneath the streets of Istanbul, death had stirred, and Poirot's little grey cells were already on the hunt. Chapter 2. Descent into the Ancient Dark. Inspector Kemal Bey was exactly as Poirot had predicted, a man of composed intelligence and quiet strength. He was in his middle years, with eyes that carried the wisdom of experience and a voice shaped by the poetic rhythm of his native Turkish tongue. Yet, his English was deliberate and articulate, reflecting the education of one who had studied far beyond the boundaries of his homeland. There was, in his demeanor, that curious balance of scientific reason and inherited superstition, an awareness of modern rationality shadowed by the echoes of centuries-old tradition. Our journey to the scene of Sir Lionel Harcourt's death led us through Istanbul's winding arteries, the narrow lanes where past and present seemed to breathe the same air. The morning sun sliced through ancient stone alleys, revealing flashes of domes and minarets, the city whispering of forgotten empires beneath its daily bustle. Inspector Kemal's motorcar, a relatively new possession of the police, rattled along uneven cobblestones with surprising ease. Yet, I caught our driver making a discreet sign of protection as we passed beneath the shadow of a crumbling Roman archway. "Gentlemen," said Kemal as we neared our destination, "what you are about to see is not for the faint of heart. This site is as much a relic of myth as it is of stone. Some among my men believe it should remain buried forever." The car halted beside the magnificent silhouette of the Hagia Sophia, that eternal guardian of Istanbul's skyline. Its domes loomed above us, ancient, solemn, as if brooding over the endless passage of human ambition. From there, Kemal guided us through narrowing streets until we stopped before an inconspicuous stone structure wedged between a carpet shop and a dim little cafe, perfumed with tobacco smoke and murmured conversation in a dozen languages. "The entrance to the cistern," explained Kemal, drawing from his coat a heavy iron key tarnished by age. "Sealed since the professor's death. No one has entered since." His words hung in the cool morning air. As the lock yielded with a metallic groan, a gust of damp, cold air rose from below, thick with the scent of moss, salt, and time itself. The staircase before us seemed to vanish into pure blackness. It was like opening the throat of the earth. I felt the chill of it along my spine. Kemal raised an electric torch, its white beams slicing through the murk like a living thing. "After you, gentlemen," he said quietly. Our descent began. Each step echoed strangely, the sound multiplying, until it seemed as though unseen feet were following us down. The air grew colder, heavier. My breath clouded faintly in the dim light. It felt less like entering a ruin and more like crossing the threshold into another age. The stairs seemed to spiral downward for an eternity, and when we finally reached the floor of the chamber, the sight that greeted us was beyond imagining. Stretching into the darkness stood a vast forest of marble columns, hundreds of them, rising like petrified trees, their surfaces glistening with condensation. The torchlight caught the ripples on shallow pools beneath our feet, reflections trembling like fragments of silver glass. From above came the soft, rhythmic dripping of water, a sound both soothing and eerily alive. "This cistern," said Kemal in a reverent tone that echoed softly through the chamber, "was built during the reign of Emperor Justinian. Forgotten for centuries, rediscovered only in recent years. There are many such reservoirs beneath the old city, though few in such remarkable condition." We moved cautiously through that spectral space, Poirot's keen eyes darting across each detail, the inscriptions carved in worn Greek, the capitals decorated with serpentine leaves and forgotten symbols. There was beauty here, yes, but also oppression. The weight of ages pressed down, as though the very stones remembered their purpose and resented intrusion. Finally, we reached a section where wooden scaffolding and archaeological tools lay scattered. "Here," said Kemal gravely. Sir Lionel conducted his final excavation. The remnants of his work were everywhere, carefully labeled jars, brushes, measuring rods, and buckets of disturbed earth. But at the center of the scene lay a white chalk outline on the ancient flagstone, stark and chilling under the torchlight. "That," said Kemal, lowering his voice, "marks where his body was found. His assistant, Theodosia Karakos, discovered him at dawn after he failed to return to his hotel. She searched all night." Poirot stepped closer, crouching near the outline, his expression a portrait of concentration. "The lantern?" he asked quietly. "Where was it discovered?" Kemal pointed a few feet away. "There, extinguished, though filled with oil earlier that evening." "Most curious," murmured Poirot, eyes narrowing. "A man in terror rarely takes the time to put out his own light." Kemal nodded grimly. "His face, monsieur. It was frozen in a look of such fear as I have never seen in 20 years of police work. It was as though he had seen something no living man should behold." "The ghost of Istanbul, perhaps?" Poirot's voice carried a trace of irony. Before anyone could reply, a voice emerged from the darkness beyond our circle of light, a woman's voice, low and trembling, yet rich with emotion. "The ghost is real, monsieur. As real as these stones, and far more dangerous." We turned sharply. The torch revealed a woman standing among the columns, a striking figure with dark hair streaked in silver and eyes deep as obsidian pools. Her expression was worn by grief, but steadied by purpose. Inspector Kemal exhaled softly. "Allow me to introduce Miss Theodosia Karakos," he said. "Sir Lionel's guide and translator, and the one who found him." She inclined her head with quiet dignity. "I wish I had not." As her words lingered in the echoing vaults of that Byzantine tomb, I found myself studying her with deep curiosity. There was sorrow in her gaze, but also something unspoken, a knowing. Perhaps she, more than anyone, understood what truly haunted these ancient stones. Chapter 3. The Widow's Tale. Our return from the ancient depths of the Byzantine cistern to the polished grandeur of the Pera Palace Hotel was marked by an almost reverent silence. The shift from subterranean shadows to the glittering chandeliers and marble columns of the hotel felt like stepping across centuries. Down below had lain a world untouched by time, a realm of echoes and stone. Up here, the air hummed with conversation, perfume, and the faint clink of crystal. Yet beneath that elegance, the same whisper of unease followed us, like the chill of the cistern that refused to fade. By the time we entered the hotel's grand lobby, news of Sir Lionel Harcourt's mysterious death had already begun to stir the expatriate circles of Istanbul. I noticed how conversations dimmed at our passing, how fans paused mid-wave, and how gloved hands hovered over teacups as curious eyes tracked our movement. The Pera Palace, where Europe met the East in velvet luxury, was alive with speculation. And now, in one of its most splendid salons, we were to meet the people whose lives had become entangled in the archaeologist's final, fatal discovery. The Ottoman salon, where Inspector Kemal had arranged our meeting, was a room of magnificent excess, gilded mirrors reflecting endless versions of oneself, Persian rugs that seemed to whisper stories of conquest, and tall windows that framed the Bosphorus like a moving painting. Beyond the glass, ships and ferries drifted along the silver waters between two continents, Asia and Europe, mystery and reason. Lady Margaret Harcourt entered with a quiet authority that instantly silenced the room. She was a woman of refined beauty, the kind that deepens with maturity rather than fades. Perhaps 45, though her poise rendered age irrelevant. Her auburn hair, touched faintly with silver at the temples, was arranged with meticulous care. She wore mourning black, the fabric gleaming faintly like polished jet, and her movements carried the composure of someone long practiced in the art of dignity. Yet, in her eyes, I saw the flicker of exhaustion, the fragile restraint of a woman clinging to civility while standing on the edge of despair. "Gentlemen," she said, as Inspector Kemal performed introductions with his characteristic grace, "I appreciate your attention to my husband's unfortunate death. Though I must admit, I do not understand why an additional investigation is necessary. Surely this matter, extraordinary as it is, belongs to the realm of the supernatural rather than the criminal." Poirot's brows rose slightly, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Then you believe, madame, that this so-called ghost of Istanbul has a measure of truth?" Lady Margaret regarded him steadily. "I believe in facts, Monsieur Poirot, and the facts, as presented to me, defy natural explanation." Her tone was even, her words carefully measured. "My husband's body bore signs of terror. There was no weapon, no struggle, nothing that could account for it by earthly means." Poirot inclined his head, his tone deceptively gentle. "Perhaps, madame, you could enlighten us about your late husband's work. We understand he was pursuing something of unusual importance before his death." At this, Lady Margaret's composure faltered for the first time. She inhaled slowly, then spoke with quiet intensity. Obsession would be the truer word. For the last 18 months, Sir Lionel was consumed by a theory, one he believed would rewrite part of history. He had traced a series of clues through ancient manuscripts and inscriptions, all pointing, he claimed, to a hidden cache belonging to Emperor Constantine the Great himself. Her eyes, momentarily alight with remembered admiration, softened. He believed Constantine concealed certain artifacts and treasures during the founding of the city, relics of power, perhaps even symbols of legitimacy to the imperial throne. If found, such a discovery would alter everything we know of the empire's early years. And the potential value of such relics? Poirot asked mildly, though I detected that familiar note of curiosity that meant his mind was already far ahead. Lady Margaret hesitated, the faintest tightening around her lips betraying discomfort. It was not only historical value, Monsieur Poirot. Our finances had suffered. My husband's expeditions were costly, and over the years they depleted much of what we possessed. We sold heirlooms, mortgaged our estate, everything went into his work. This discovery, if genuine, was to be our redemption. Her confession hung between us, delicate yet heavy. I admired her candor. It was rare for a woman of her rank to speak so plainly. But there was something guarded in her manner, a precision in every word, as though she were revealing just enough and no more. Poirot leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but probing. "And on the evening of your husband's death, madame, where were you?" "I dined here, in this very room," she replied without hesitation, "with Mrs. Patterson, the wife of the American consul, and Colonel Whitmore of the Imperial Ottoman Bank. We concluded dinner around 9. I retired shortly after and remained in my suite until I was informed of the discovery." "Your husband mentioned no engagement that evening, no meeting perhaps?" She looked genuinely thoughtful, even surprised. "Now that you mention it, he did seem rather animated at luncheon that day. He spoke of a message. Someone had contacted him regarding a new inscription, something that could confirm his theory about Constantine. But he was secretive, as always. Lionel never shared half of what he knew until he was certain of his findings." Poirot inclined his head. A wise man in his caution, but a dangerous one, perhaps, when too close to revelation. When Lady Margaret finally rose to leave, she did so with the same composed grace with which she had entered. The soft rustle of silk trailed behind her as she moved through the golden light of the salon, her back straight, her head high. Yet as the door closed, I could not shake a growing unease. Her answers had been precise, too precise. Each one seemed rehearsed, as though her grief had been edited to fit propriety. As Poirot often said, the truth hides not in what is spoken, but in the spaces between words. And in Lady Margaret Harcourt's elegant composure, there was silence enough to conceal a secret. Chapter 4. Rivals and Benefactors. The remainder of the afternoon unfolded like a play in several acts, each visitor to the grand salon of the Pera Palace, introducing a new dimension to the mystery surrounding Sir Lionel Harcourt's untimely death. One after another, the guests arrived, each with polished manners, carefully chosen words, and hidden motives simmering just beneath the surface. To an observer well versed in human behavior, it became immediately clear that this was not merely an archaeological inquiry. It was a study of pride, ambition, and rivalry dressed in scholarly attire. The first to arrive was Professor Rami Effendi, a man of about 55, whose poised demeanor reflected both intellect and pride in his heritage. His tailored Western suit could not entirely conceal the quiet weight of a man caught between two worlds, an academic who revered scientific precision yet carried the deep cultural loyalties of his homeland. "Monsieur Poirot," he began, his English deliberate but precise, "I understand you are examining the unfortunate passing of Sir Lionel Harcourt. Though I shall of course cooperate fully, there are matters here that concern me deeply, as one entrusted with preserving the history of my country." Effendi's reputation preceded him. A doctorate from the Sorbonne, numerous published works, and a fierce defender of Ottoman antiquities. His words carried not just scholarship, but passion. "Too often," he continued, Foreign excavators remove our treasures as though they were theirs to claim. They strip our land of its story." Poirot's sharp gaze softened slightly as he replied, "Then Sir Lionel's work displeased you, perhaps?" The professor's eyes glinted with a restrained fervour. "He was not the worst among them, monsieur, but his latest excavations risked repeating the same tragedy of cultural theft that has haunted our soil for generations." Yet, beneath Effendi's righteous indignation, there lingered something else, an unspoken dread. When he referred to the local legends surrounding the catacombs beneath the Sultan Ahmed district, his steady hands trembled ever so slightly. Despite his education, some part of him seemed to believe that disturbing the dead might indeed bring forth ancient vengeance. Following this impassioned scholar came Captain Julian Rhodes, a man whose every movement bore the unmistakable mark of military discipline. Tall, sun-weathered, and direct in speech, he entered with a brisk nod. "Gentlemen," he declared, "a strange affair, Harcourt's death, but I imagine you'll find the usual rational explanation soon enough." Behind his crisp confidence, however, lay hints of financial desperation. Once decorated for bravery in the Empire's distant campaigns, Rhodes had retired with little more than his reputation. His partnership with Sir Lionel was not born of scholarly zeal but survival. "I financed the dig," he admitted, "secured the equipment, paid the workers, while Harcourt handled the academic nonsense. In return, I'd take a share of the profits from whatever treasures turned up." He spoke with the blunt honesty of a soldier, yet when Poirot pressed him further, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "There were incidents," he confessed, "locals following us, whispers of curses, crowds growing restless. This talk of the ghost of Istanbul, it rattled them. Frankly, I was beginning to wonder if the risk was worth the gold." His tone hardened again, but his eyes betrayed unease. He was a man accustomed to facing bullets, not legends. The third visitor was perhaps the most striking, Miss Evelyn Trent, who arrived exactly on time, composed and sharp as the cut of her spectacles. There was nothing demure about her presence. She exuded intellect and determination, her voice calm yet edged with the kind of authority that demanded attention. "I was acquainted with Sir Lionel professionally," she said smoothly. "His recent claims regarding the treasure of Constantine were ambitious, to say the least. Many in the academic community found his conclusions rather convenient, given his financial circumstances." Her words were delivered with scholarly restraint, but the undertone was unmistakable, jealousy disguised as skepticism. Evelyn Trent had built a formidable reputation in her own right, a Cambridge scholar, widely published and respected in archaeological circles, but Harcourt's discoveries had long overshadowed her. "Did you ever see any of his findings?" Poirot inquired. Her lips tightened. "He was secretive to the point of obsession," she replied. "Wouldn't share a scrap of his research, claiming others might steal his work. I suspect he feared his discoveries wouldn't withstand true academic scrutiny." As the golden light of afternoon drifted across the Bosphorus, Poirot and Hastings found themselves surrounded by fragments of truth that refused to fit neatly together. A proud nationalist haunted by ghosts of the past, a desperate captain seeking fortune amid ruins, and a brilliant rival cloaked in envy, all connected by the death of a man whose ambition had perhaps outstripped his wisdom. Each interview revealed motives strong enough to kill, yet none provided certainty. The mystery deepened, twisting itself through layers of cultural pride, greed, and rivalry. Poirot, seated near the window as dusk descended over Istanbul, tapped his fingers thoughtfully upon the armrest. "Mon ami," he murmured, "in every excavation, there are not only relics buried in the earth, but secrets buried in the human heart. It is those we must unearth next. Chapter 5. The Science of Superstition. The next morning dawned bright over the Bosphorus, casting golden reflections across the breakfast tables of the Pera Palace. Hercule Poirot sat opposite me, his morning routine executed with the same precision he applied to murder. Each slice of bread buttered evenly, each sip of coffee measured and thoughtful. It was the ritual of a man whose mind was already at work. Before him lay a collection of Turkish newspapers, official police reports, and a neatly folded document sealed with a medical insignia. His sharp green eyes moved methodically from line to line, absorbing details that lesser men might overlook. "Mon ami," he said at last, without raising his gaze, "I am becoming more and more convinced that the talk of spirits and curses serves only to distract from the true, human cause of Sir Lionel Harcourt's death. People are far too willing to believe in phantoms when the truth is unpleasant." There was something deeply unsettling about the reports we had reviewed the previous night. Harcourt's body, found frozen in a posture of terror, hands clutched at his chest, eyes wide with dread. It was a death both sudden and dreadful. And yet, as Poirot pointed out, nothing suggested violence of a physical kind. No wounds, no bruises, only fear and something that had stopped the heart almost instantly. I leaned forward. "Then what are you suggesting, Poirot? Poison?" He looked up, eyes glinting. "Precisely. Dr. Mahmoud Pasha, a man of considerable distinction, educated in both Paris and Istanbul, has examined the remains. His findings are illuminating." Poirot paused, unfolding the physician's report with the delicacy of a man unwrapping a clue. "The good doctor notes traces of chemical irritation, muscular rigidity, and the faint scent of bitter almonds. I need not remind you, Hastings, what that implies." "Cyanide?" I ventured. Poirot nodded gravely. "Oui, though the mechanism of delivery remains uncertain. It is my belief that Sir Lionel was exposed to a toxic gas rather than an ingested poison, something subtle, immediate, and easily mistaken for supernatural vengeance by those who prefer to believe in ghosts." Our next stop took us to Sir Lionel's modest archaeological laboratory in the Galata district, a blend of modern science and ancient dust. The workshop was a curious sight: tables covered in labeled fragments, glass flasks filled with murky liquids, and instruments gleaming beneath beams of sunlight that cut through the tall, narrow windows. The air smelled faintly of metal, oil, and age. Its proprietor, Stavros, an elderly Greek gentleman with eyes as sharp as his tongue, welcomed us warmly. "Ah, gentlemen, you come about poor Sir Lionel, yes? A brilliant man, always careful with his chemicals. Too careful, maybe." His admiration was genuine, but beneath it lay the unmistakable caution of someone who understood that even great men could make deadly mistakes. Poirot, ever the observer, moved about the room in silence, examining shelves of reagents and vials labeled in both English and French. "Hydrochloric acid, ammonium chloride, potassium cyanide," he murmured, tapping one bottle lightly with his finger. Our archaeologist possessed everything needed to produce a most effective toxic vapor. The question, Hastings, is this: was it his own doing, or did another use his knowledge against him? As we probed further, an intriguing revelation surfaced. Stavros mentioned that Miss Evelyn Trent, the sharp-witted rival we had interviewed the day before, had been a frequent visitor to this very workshop. "She came often," he explained, polishing his spectacles. "Always polite, very clever, talked with Sir Lionel about metals, about cleaning techniques for artifacts. But sometimes," he added with a knowing glance, "they did not agree." Poirot's eyebrows rose ever so slightly. Ah, a lady well versed in both chemistry and rivalry. Most interesting. Her access to the workshop's materials, combined with her expertise, painted a troubling picture. She had both motive and means, and perhaps opportunity. The afternoon took a more atmospheric turn as we met with Theodosia Karakos, a local historian and folklorist who knew more about Istanbul's ancient legends than anyone alive. We sat with her in a dimly lit cafe near the Grand Bazaar, where the air was thick with the fragrance of coffee and the soft hum of pipes. "The stories go back centuries," she began, lowering her voice as if afraid to wake the spirits themselves. "Those who disturb the catacombs beneath Sultanahmet, they suffer, they see things, smell strange odors. Some die screaming of visions in the dark." Her tales might have been dismissed as superstition, yet even Poirot listened without interruption. When she described the recurring reports of terrible smells and sudden deaths marked by terror and suffocation, his expression grew keen. "Fascinating," he murmured when we stepped back into the sunlight. "Not for the ghosts, mon ami, but for the science behind the fear. The symptoms she describes, respiratory failure, disorientation, panic, these correspond not to curses, but to chemistry." As dusk settled over Istanbul, Poirot returned to his suite and arranged his evidence across the desk like a general preparing for battle. Reports, photographs, maps of the cistern tunnels, and the doctor's findings, all laid out in meticulous order. I watched as he surveyed the spread, his mind clearly at work, connecting the invisible threads that wove between folklore, science, and human ambition. "At last," he said softly, "we begin to see the pattern. Someone with both intellect and knowledge of local fears has weaponized superstition. The ghost of Istanbul, Hastings, is no spirit, it is a mask. A clever disguise for murder, crafted by human hands and executed with scientific precision." I felt a shiver as I realized what he meant. The line between legend and reality had blurred, perhaps deliberately so. Somewhere among our suspects was a mind capable not only of murder but of turning myth into its perfect camouflage. Chapter 6. Footprints in the Mud. By the fourth morning of our investigation, the enigma surrounding Sir Lionel Harcourt's death had grown into a web of intrigue that would have baffled even the most seasoned detective. What had begun as a tale steeped in superstition was, under Poirot's meticulous scrutiny, transforming into a case of cold, deliberate intellect. My years of military service had taught me to discern order within confusion, yet even I marveled at how effortlessly Poirot imposed logic upon chaos. He was in one of his most contemplative moods that morning at the Pera Palace, his breakfast taken with mechanical precision, the telltale sign that his little grey cells were hard at work. Every movement, from the placement of his spoon to the folding of his napkin, carried the rhythm of a man piecing together the invisible threads of truth. He had spent the previous evening poring over the evidence, analyzing photographs, measurements, and witness statements with relentless focus. "Mon ami," he said at last, adjusting his tie before we set out once again for the underground cistern, "it is becoming increasingly clear to me that no spirit from the other world played a hand in Sir Lionel's death. What we face is a mind of science, a mind that has used knowledge not to enlighten, but to kill." Under Inspector Kemal's supervision, we descended once more into the Byzantine cistern, now transformed by a network of electric lamps that replaced the flickering torches of our first visit. The new lighting revealed a world previously hidden by shadow. The ancient columns, their reflections trembling in shallow pools of water, gleamed like silent sentinels of history. Yet what drew Poirot's immediate attention were the marks upon the damp floor, subtle, scattered impressions left in the soft sediment. He crouched, his sharp eyes darting from one set of prints to another. "Observe, Hastings," he murmured. "The mud speaks. It tells us who has passed this way, and perhaps who should not have." What followed was a lesson in scientific deduction as only Poirot could deliver. With the precision of a surveyor, he measured each footprint, noting differences in depth, stride, and direction. "Here," he said, pointing to a cluster of impressions near the chalk outline marking where the archaeologist's body had been found. "We see two sets of prints. One is light and hesitant, the victim's. The other, firmer and more deliberate, belongs to our murderer. Notice how this person avoids the softer patches of sediment, stepping only where the ground is firm. That is the behavior of someone who knows these passages well." It was a revelation. Only those familiar with the cistern's treacherous paths, archaeologists who had worked extensively in the area, could have navigated the subterranean maze with such confidence. Poirot's gaze sharpened as he recalled the list of suspects. "Mademoiselle Evelyn Trent," he mused, "has spent many hours in these tunnels. She possesses both the scientific understanding and the practical knowledge that such a crime would demand." Back above ground, Poirot and Inspector Kemal analyzed the chemical residues collected from the scene. The results confirmed Poirot's growing theory. "Hydrogen cyanide," he announced gravely. "A deadly gas, colorless and swift. It was generated deliberately, through a chemical reaction designed to unfold precisely here in this confined space." He explained the process with unnerving clarity. The combination of two readily available substances producing lethal vapors in minutes. Once released, the gas would have overwhelmed Sir Lionel almost instantly, leaving him no chance to escape. By the time the fumes dispersed naturally through the old ventilation shafts, the crime would appear as nothing more than a tragic accident, or worse, a curse from beyond the grave. It was an audacious plan, both brilliant and cruel. Only someone deeply versed in chemistry could have executed it with such precision, and only someone driven by desperation would have dared to try. Evelyn Trent fit both conditions. Her career had been teetering on the edge of obscurity ever since Sir Lionel's announcement of his Constantine treasure discovery, a find that would have immortalized him and overshadowed her work completely. "Consider it, Hastings," Poirot said as we walked through the narrow streets near the Golden Horn. "For an academic, reputation is life itself. To lose that, to see one's achievements dismissed and forgotten, can drive even the most rational mind to extremes. From the fragments we gathered, her visits to the workshop, her access to chemicals, her familiarity with the underground geography, a picture began to form. She had lured Sir Lionel to the cistern under the pretext of revealing a new inscription linked to his discovery. There, under the guise of scientific collaboration, she had set her trap. When he entered, the reaction was triggered. Within moments, the air became poison. Poirot's reconstruction of the crime was chilling in its precision. "Miss Trent," he said softly, "turned myth into method. By invoking the old legends of the ghost of Istanbul, she concealed her own hand entirely. The city's fears became her camouflage. As we emerged once again into the daylight, the bustling life of modern Istanbul seemed almost surreal after the gloom of the ancient underworld. I couldn't help reflecting on the strange harmony between past and present, the ancient structures beneath our feet serving as the stage for a murder born of modern science." "The ghost," Poirot remarked, pausing to gaze across the Bosphorus, "was never of the supernatural kind, Hastings. It was the ghost of human ambition, of pride, envy, and intellect twisted by jealousy. and like all such ghosts, it is very much alive. Chapter 7. The Unraveling, the Subtle Art of Detection. By this stage of our inquiry, I had long since learned that working with Hercule Poirot was akin to witnessing the delicate craft of an archaeologist, each layer of mystery peeled back with infinite patience until the truth, like an artifact long buried, was carefully unearthed. Every clue, however trivial, contributed to a larger mosaic, and now, in the heart of Istanbul, that mosaic was nearing completion. What had begun as a tale drenched in superstition and whispered legends of a vengeful ghost had evolved into something far more tangible. A meticulously planned crime cloaked in the trappings of myth. The ghost that haunted the Byzantine cisterns, Poirot had determined, was no spirit at all, but rather the creation of an intellect as sharp as it was cold. The murderer had weaponized science and fear with equal mastery, using both to disguise an act of vengeance born of ambition. On the morning of our 5th day in Istanbul, Poirot was a man transformed, silent, concentrated, and precise in every movement. His breakfast was taken without a word, each sip of coffee a rhythm in the quiet symphony of thought. I recognized the signs. He was on the verge of revelation. By mid-morning, his papers and sketches were arranged across the desk like the pieces of an intricate puzzle. "Mon ami," he said at last, his gaze still fixed on the floor plans of the cistern, "the time has come to test what I believe to be true. A theory, no matter how elegant, is worthless until it meets the reaction of those it accuses. Today, we observe, and we provoke." What followed was a performance of subtle genius. Rather than formal interrogations that might raise walls of defensiveness, Poirot preferred what he called the conversational stage. He would draw his suspects into casual dialogue, lacing each encounter with carefully planted truths, allowing their reactions, those fleeting betrayals of expression, to reveal far more than any confession. Our first encounter came that morning in the lobby of the Pera Palace, where the city's expatriate scholars and archaeologists gathered to gossip beneath the glittering chandeliers. As expected, Miss Evelyn Trent was there, her poise as polished as ever, conversing animatedly about the academic repercussions of Sir Lionel's death. Poirot, ever the actor, approached her with a polite smile. "Ah, Mademoiselle Trent," he began in a tone of easy civility, "one must admire your dedication. Even in such tragic circumstances, you continue your studies. I hear your work has taken you deep beneath the city, into those mysterious Byzantine passages." The change was instant, so slight that only Poirot's hawk-like perception could have caught it. The confident academic facade flickered. Her fingers tightened around her notebook. "Indeed," she replied, her voice steady but cool. "Such sites offer invaluable insight into early Christian relics and rituals." Poirot inclined his head. "And yet," he added lightly, "few scholars know those passages so intimately. One could almost say you could find your way blindfolded, n'est-ce pas?" A faint color rose to her cheeks, a silent admission that she understood exactly what he was implying. Without accusing her, Poirot had struck at the heart of her secret. Her deep familiarity with the cistern's labyrinth had been no mere scholarly curiosity. Our next encounter took place in the hotel's smoking lounge, where Captain Rhodes sat slouched in a chair, his uniform creased, a half-finished brandy before him. His was a face carved by worry and fatigue, the look of a man haunted more by unpaid debts than by ghosts. "Captain Rhodes," said Poirot amiably, "it seems the loss of Sir Lionel has left many ventures, shall we say, unsettled. His findings would have secured not only fame, but fortune for his partners. No?" The captain gave a dry chuckle. You might as well say it plainly, Monsieur Poirot. I was counting on Lionel's discovery to pull me out of ruin. His death has left me with empty pockets, and worse, unanswered questions. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. And yet you are a man of action, not of chemicals. Had you wished him harm, I suspect your methods would have been, shall we say, less sophisticated. Rhodes raised an eyebrow, then gave a short laugh. Quite right. I prefer my battles above ground, not in catacombs filled with poison. His bluntness, combined with a certain rough integrity, confirmed what Poirot had already suspected. The captain was desperate, yes, but not deceitful. The final test came with Professor Rami Effendi, whom we encountered later that day in deep discussion with several government officials. The professor was a man of passion and principle. His voice rose and fell with conviction as he argued for the preservation of Ottoman heritage against foreign intrusion. When Poirot approached, he greeted him warmly but warily. "Professor Effendi," said Poirot, "you speak so eloquently of Istanbul's ghosts, those ancient legends woven into the city's history. I must commend you on your understanding of local folklore. You seem to know every tale connected to those old cisterns." Effendi's dark eyes flickered, not with guilt but with discomfort. "The legends serve as moral lessons, Monsieur Poirot," he said carefully. "Even if we do not believe them literally, they reflect the fears and wisdom of our ancestors. They deserve our respect." Poirot inclined his head. "Indeed. Yet you yourself, I think, do not believe in spirits?" A faint smile curved the professor's lips. "No, I do not. But I do believe in what they represent: human greed, ambition, and folly." His words, though spoken philosophically, rang with deeper truth. As we left him, Poirot's expression softened. "He is an honest man, Hastings," he said. "A patriot, perhaps too emotional, but his conscience is clean. He fights for his country, not against his fellow man." By the time the sun began to sink over the Golden Horn, the puzzle had tightened its frame. Each conversation, each subtle exchange, had served its purpose. Captain Rhodes's desperation was too blunt, Professor Effendi's integrity too solid. Only one suspect combined the scientific knowledge, local familiarity, and emotional motive necessary to engineer both the crime and its ghostly disguise: Evelyn Trent. Poirot folded his notes neatly, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction. "The pieces fit, Hastings. The ghost of Istanbul was born not from myth, but from the mind of a scholar, one who turned intellect into murder." Chapter 8: The Final Curtain. The fifth evening in Istanbul unfolded with a sense of poised anticipation, that electric quiet which always heralded the climax of one of Hercule Poirot's intricate investigations. Over the years, I had attended enough of these gatherings to recognize the peculiar stillness that precedes revelation, the subtle shift in the air when truth itself is about to step from behind the curtain. Inside the grand Ottoman salon of the Pera Palace, a chamber that seemed born to witness confessions and drama alike, every face reflected that unspoken tension. The room glowed beneath the mellow radiance of chandeliers, their crystals scattering golden flecks upon burgundy velvet chairs and the richly woven Persian rugs. Ornate mirrors framed in gilt lined the walls, reflecting an audience of suspects who waited, some resigned, others restless, for Poirot's final act. It was a scene perfectly staged for his brand of theatre, the meticulous Belgian detective, poised at the heart of mystery, about to untangle threads woven from deceit, ambition, and guilt. Inspector Kamal had dutifully assembled the principal figures. Each guest sat in uneasy composure, aware that this evening might either exonerate or condemn them. By the tall windows overlooking the dimming Bosphorus stood Lady Margaret Harcourt, her mourning dress a dark silhouette against the crimson twilight. Though she had carried herself with quiet grace since her husband's death, I detected the faint quiver of apprehension behind that calm exterior. Her financial difficulties, long kept under genteel discretion, had furnished a convincing motive. And yet, something about her steadfast dignity had always seemed inconsistent with the cruel ingenuity required for so cold-blooded a crime. Across from her, Professor Rami Effendi sat with scholarly poise, his keen eyes missing nothing. He was a man torn between intellect and patriotism, his passion for protecting Turkey's ancient heritage at times bordering on obsession. He had every reason to despise Sir Lionel Harcourt, whose archaeological pursuits had danced dangerously close to plunder. Yet despite his eloquence and fervor, our inquiry had revealed telling gaps in his technical expertise, gaps that rendered him unlikely to have devised the complex chemical stratagem behind the murder. Seated slightly apart was Captain Julian Rhodes, his rigid posture betraying his military training. A man of honor, though not immune to the weight of financial ruin. His candor regarding his debts had lent his motives a pitiful clarity. Still, I had never sensed in him the subtle cunning such a crime demanded. He was a soldier, direct, brave, and tragically predictable. Not far from Poirot, Miss Evelyn Trent occupied a discreet corner beside one of the salon's marble columns. Her choice of position seemed deliberate, half concealed, half commanding, a fortress of composure from which she could observe without being easily observed herself. Her background in chemistry and archaeology had marked her from the outset as a figure of interest. Calm, analytical, and self-contained, she had spoken the language of science, but guarded her emotions as if they were sacred relics. Yet tonight, beneath the salon's golden light, even she seemed subtly altered, her eyes too watchful, her fingers nervously intertwined. By the fireplace sat Theodosia Karakos, the woman whose terrified discovery of Sir Lionel's body had ignited this investigation. The flickering firelight etched deep shadows across her face, accentuating both her age and her weariness. Her fascination with Istanbul's legends, the whispered tales of spirits haunting forgotten cisterns, had at first seemed little more than local color. But Poirot, with his uncanny intuition, had seen in her folklore the key to the murderer's disguise. And then there was Poirot himself, impeccably dressed in black evening attire, his patent leather shoes shining like glass, his famous moustache glistening with meticulous care. He stood at the center of the room, every inch the master of ceremonies. His presence, though diminutive, commanded absolute attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm but resonant, "we are gathered this evening to bring to a close not only the affair of Sir Lionel Harcourt's death, but also the spectre that has haunted this city, the so-called ghost of Istanbul." The words hung in the air like smoke. No one spoke. Even the soft ticking of the salon's antique clock seemed hesitant, as though time itself awaited Poirot's next sentence. "From the first," he continued, pacing slowly before the assembled company, "I was struck by the sophistication of the crime. The use of a gaseous poison in the ancient cisterns beneath this city required three things: scientific knowledge, intimate familiarity with the terrain, and an understanding of human fear. Our murderer possessed all three." A murmur rippled through the room, quickly silenced by Poirot's raised hand. His gaze rested briefly on Miss Trent. Her poise faltered. For the first time, I saw her knuckles whiten as she clasped her trembling hands together. "The evidence of footprints," he went on, his tone sharp as the edge of a scalpel, "revealed not merely the murderer's presence, but their experience within those subterranean tunnels. Such knowledge could not have been gleaned from books or maps. It must have come from personal exploration. And that, mes amis, narrows our list indeed. He paused, allowing the implication to sink in. Around the room, every breath seemed to weigh a little heavier. The curtain was about to rise on truth, and perhaps fall forever on one of those assembled. The air inside the Palace salon grew dense with tension as Poirot resumed, his calm precision slicing through the silence. "The final proof, mes amis," he said, "lies not in speculation but in science." His words carried a quiet authority that stilled even the faint rustle of silk and the creak of leather chairs. The results from the chemical analysis, he explained, had been conclusive. Traces of a highly toxic compound found near Sir Lionel Harcourt's body revealed the deliberate generation of a lethal gas, produced through a controlled reaction using substances any archaeological laboratory could easily access. It was no crude improvisation, but the work of a methodical, scientifically trained mind. Poirot's voice, calm yet inexorable, outlined the precision of the scheme. The crime, he noted, was not a crime of impulse, but one born of intellect and planning. The murderer had exploited Sir Lionel's secretive habits, his tendency to chase discoveries in solitude, to follow promising clues without informing even his closest associates. The lure had been irresistible, a message promising evidence of a newly uncovered inscription, possibly tied to the Emperor Constantine himself. It was this bait that drew him to the shadowed depths of the ancient cistern, his own ambition leading him into the snare. Poirot turned then toward Miss Evelyn Trent. The gentle light of the chandeliers caught the pallor that had overtaken her face. His words struck like hammer blows. "And so," he continued, "we come to the motive, the oldest and most tragic of academic sins, jealousy. Sir Lionel's recent discovery, which promised to secure him everlasting fame within the scholarly world, had threatened to eclipse a colleague whose life's work rested precariously on recognition and respect. Miss Trent's career, long overshadowed by the brilliance of others, had reached a breaking point. The mask of composure she had worn throughout the investigation cracked at last. Her voice, trembling but defiant, spilled forth a confession laced with bitterness and wounded pride. She spoke of endless years spent laboring behind celebrated men, her innovations unacknowledged, her ambitions dismissed. When Sir Lionel announced his find, a revelation that would immortalize him while reducing her to a mere footnote, something within her had snapped. Her mastery of archaeological chemistry had armed her with the knowledge to synthesize a deadly vapor. Her understanding of Istanbul's labyrinthine cisterns gave her the perfect setting, and her familiarity with local folklore, the legends of spirits haunting ancient ruins, provided the perfect camouflage. The ghost of Istanbul, Poirot revealed, had never been a spirit at all, but a creation of human malice cloaked in myth. As Inspector Kemal's officers stepped forward, the reality of her actions seemed to crash upon Miss Trent like a wave. The proud scholar, once destined for acclaim, now faced infamy. Her academic dreams had been consumed by the very ambition that had once fueled them. She was led away in silence, the heavy doors of the salon closing behind her with a final echoing thud. Poirot turned back to us, his tone softening as he concluded. Thus, the ghost that haunted Istanbul returns to the realm of legend. The true spectre, my friends, is not of the dead, but of envy and pride, those ancient forces that dwell within us all. Outside, the city murmured with life, the call of the muezzin rising over the Bosphorus, the glow of lanterns flickering across the old stones. The Byzantine cisterns, now empty of both danger and superstition, would soon welcome tourists once more, their still waters reflecting only history, not horror. Yet as I watched Poirot adjust his immaculate cuffs, I could not help but ponder the detective's final words. The mysteries of the human heart, I realized, are older and darker than any ruins we dig from the earth. And so the curtain fell on another of Poirot's triumphs, proof once again that reason, patience, and truth will always pierce the veil of superstition. No phantom, however fearsome, can withstand the brilliance of Hercule Poirot's little grey cells. Here's a complete analytical and immersive breakdown of The Ghost of Istanbul. Chapter 1. The Summons from the Golden Horn. The story opens in London, where Hastings receives an urgent letter from Poirot summoning him to Istanbul. Upon arrival, Hastings finds Poirot already embroiled in an eerie case: the death of Sir Lionel Harcourt, an English archaeologist found lifeless in the Basilica cistern, his face twisted in indescribable terror. Locals whisper of the ghost of Istanbul, a vengeful spirit haunting those who disturb the city's buried past. Poirot, however, suspects something far less spectral: murder veiled in superstition. The grandeur of Istanbul, the domes, the call to prayer, the ancient stones, forms a living backdrop to the mystery where East and West, reason and myth, seem to collide. What we learn. This chapter sets the tone of duality between civilization and myth, logic and fear. Poirot's conviction that superstition can mask human deceit establishes the intellectual heart of the story. Moral theme. Fear, when left unchecked, becomes a weapon for manipulation. Viewer. Question. Would you dare question your beliefs if reason challenged them? Chapter 2. Descent into the ancient dark. Poirot and Hastings, guided by Inspector Kemal Bey, descend into the vast Byzantine cistern where the tragedy occurred. The torchlight reveals columns like ghostly sentinels and pools of still water shimmering with eerie reflections. Amid the tools of excavation lies a chalk outline marking Sir Lionel's last moments. His assistant, Theodosia Karakos, appears from the shadows, grief-stricken, guarded, and strangely certain that the ghost is real. Poirot, though polite, begins probing the inconsistencies of her account. The extinguished lantern, the position of the body, and the absence of struggle suggest deliberate staging. What we learn: the ghost story is revealed as a smokescreen. Poirot's deduction that Sir Lionel's lantern was purposefully extinguished turns myth into methodical misdirection. Moral theme. Truth hides best in the places people refuse to look, inside fear itself. Viewer question. If fear could protect you from danger, would you still want to uncover the truth behind it? Chapter 3. The Widow's Tale. Back at the Pera Palace Hotel, Poirot meets Lady Margaret Harcourt, whose refined grief conceals a practiced restraint. She explains her husband's obsession with discovering Emperor Constantine's lost relics, a quest that drained their fortune and reputation. Her confession of financial strain gives the investigation its first tangible motive, yet her manner is too rehearsed, her sorrow too orderly. Poirot senses she is concealing something, perhaps not guilt, but fear of disgrace. What we learn: ambition and pride often blur the line between love and possession. Lady Margaret's desperation humanizes the cost of her husband's obsession. Moral theme. Devotion without balance can turn admiration into ruin. Viewer question. Would you risk everything for someone's dream, even if it destroyed your own stability? Chapter 4. Rivals and benefactors. Poirot interviews three pivotal figures: Professor Rami Effendi, Captain Julian Rhodes, and Miss Evelyn Trent. Effendi, a nationalist scholar, condemns foreign excavations as theft of Turkish heritage. Rhodes, a former soldier and financier of Harcourt's expedition, admits his desperation for profit. Evelyn Trent, a brilliant academic rival, masks envy with intellect, criticizing Harcourt's reckless theories. Beneath their civility, Poirot detects simmering resentment and concealed agendas. Each stands to gain or lose, depending on Harcourt's discovery. What we learn? Jealousy and pride disguise themselves as principle. Poirot realizes the academic world mirrors warfare, ambition fought with words instead of weapons. Moral theme: in pursuit of glory, even knowledge can become corrupted. Viewer: question: can integrity survive when success depends on others' failure? Chapter 5: The Science of Superstition. Poirot begins to untangle myth from chemistry. Medical reports reveal traces of cyanide in Sir Lionel's body, pointing to a toxic gas, subtle, instantaneous, and easily masked by fear. Poirot's visit to the archaeologist's lab exposes vials of chemicals capable of producing such vapors. The elderly caretaker, Stavros, recalls Evelyn Trent's frequent visits and heated arguments with the victim. Later, in a smoky cafe, folklorist Theodosia Karakos recounts legends of spirits that kill through poisoned air. Poirot recognizes the pattern. Someone has weaponized myth through science. What we learn? Superstition becomes the perfect camouflage for intellect turned malicious. Poirot connects terror to methodical invention. Moral theme: the most dangerous ghosts are not born of the dead, but of human intellect misused. Viewer question: do you believe science and superstition are opposites, or merely two faces of the same fear? Chapter 6: Footprints in the Mud. Returning to the cistern, Poirot studies the damp ground under electric lights. Two sets of footprints tell the story: the hesitant steps of a victim and the confident stride of one who knew the labyrinth. The analysis of chemical residue confirms hydrogen cyanide as the cause of death, generated deliberately through controlled reaction. Poirot reconstructs the crime. Sir Lionel lured to the site by promise of discovery, the gas released through scientific precision. The murder weapon was not a dagger, but knowledge itself. What we learn? The evidence reveals intellect's dark potential when consumed by envy. Evelyn Trent's access, expertise, and rivalry converge into motive and method. Moral theme: genius without conscience breeds catastrophe. Viewer: question: is brilliance a gift or a curse when guided by emotion instead of ethics? Chapter 7: The Unraveling. Poirot tests his suspects through casual conversation, a psychological game played in the refined theatre of the Pera Palace. He subtly provokes Evelyn Trent, whose composure flickers under his probing questions about her familiarity with the tunnels. Captain Rhodes, though ruined, speaks with blunt honesty, while Professor Effendi's passion reveals sincerity, not deceit. Each dialogue strips away illusion until only one remains: the woman whose intellect made her blind to morality. Poirot's quiet satisfaction signals that the puzzle's last piece has fallen into place. What we learn? The truth, like an artifact, demands patience and subtlety to unearth. Poirot's brilliance lies not in accusation, but in perception. Moral theme: deception unravels not through force, but through truth's quiet persistence. Viewer: question: do you think truth reveals itself? Or must someone like Poirot create the right moment for it to appear? Chapter 8: The Final Curtain. In the grand Ottoman salon, Poirot assembles every suspect for his customary denouement. The setting mirrors a stage, the audience tense, the detective commanding center. Piece by piece, he reconstructs the murder. Evelyn Trent lured Sir Lionel under the guise of collaboration, unleashed cyanide gas, and disguised the crime as supernatural vengeance. Her confession, born of pride and bitterness, seals her fate. Poirot's closing reflection lingers. The true ghost of Istanbul is not a spirit of legend, but envy, an emotion that kills as surely as poison. What we learn: closure arrives not through vengeance, but through understanding. Poirot restores reason to a world clouded by fear, proving that intellect tempered by morality is the only true power. Moral theme: envy is the most human of ghosts, haunting not the world of the dead, but the hearts of the living. Viewer. Question: do you think every act of betrayal begins with admiration turned sour? Let's discuss key characters. In The Ghost of Istanbul, each character serves a distinct purpose in unraveling a mystery that blurs the line between superstition and science. Hercule Poirot stands as the voice of reason amid myth, using intellect and intuition to expose a crime disguised as legend. Captain Hastings, his loyal chronicler, provides a human lens through which the story's fear and wonder unfold, grounding Poirot's brilliance in empathy. Inspector Kamal Bey, the thoughtful and pragmatic officer of Istanbul's police, bridges the world of faith and modern logic, embodying a city caught between ancient heritage and progress. Sir Lionel Harcourt, the ill-fated archaeologist, becomes both victim and symbol of human ambition, his relentless pursuit of discovery leading him to a fatal truth. Lady Margaret Harcourt represents dignity overshadowed by desperation, her husband's obsession pushing her toward the brink of ruin. Theodosia Karakos, Sir Lionel's assistant, carries the story's emotional weight, her belief in the supernatural reflecting how myth persists even in the age of science. Professor Rami Effendi stands as the proud custodian of Turkish history, torn between protecting his nation's past and confronting foreign exploitation. Captain Julian Rhodes, a man of fading glory, reveals the desperation of those seeking wealth in the ruins of empire. Evelyn Trent, the brilliant yet embittered scholar, emerges as the architect of tragedy, her jealousy and intellect converging into a meticulously planned murder disguised as a haunting. Finally, Dr. Mahmoud Pasha and the elderly chemist Stavros serve as the story's rational anchors, their expertise helping Poirot expose how human greed, not ghosts, lies behind the veil of terror. Together, this ensemble transforms Istanbul's ancient beauty into a stage for ambition, fear, and the timeless struggle between reason and superstition. My final thoughts. At its core, The Ghost of Istanbul is not merely a tale of murder and mystery, but a meditation on how easily fear can be manipulated when belief outpaces reason. Beneath the grandeur of ancient ruins and whispered legends lies a warning that the past, though sacred, can be twisted by those who seek power or recognition. Poirot's triumph is not only in unmasking a murderer, but in restoring truth to a city haunted by its own myths. Each character stands as a reflection of human weakness, envy, pride, and the hunger for legacy, reminding us that the deadliest ghosts are those we create within ourselves. If this journey through Istanbul's shadows left you intrigued, make sure to subscribe for more timeless mysteries and share your thoughts below, because every great story deserves to be questioned, discussed, and rediscovered together.